You can make a difference. By becoming a supporter of our channel, you not only help us thrive, but also become an active part of our community. The link to join us is in the description. Father, I wanted you to help me deal with the feelings I'm experiencing. I lost my husband and also recently lost my son, and I'm having trouble coping with the grief. You would say, it's not easy indeed, my daughter. Losing two people who are so important in your life, it's like the structure of your home has somehow collapsed, and it takes time. The heart needs time. We cannot expect healing today if we need to go through the process that will result in healing. And grief, it's a process. What is a process? That it naturally needs to go through a process. When someone dies within our home, my people, the structure is completely changed. It's impressive how one person, if you remove just one person, it's impressive how the family structure is modified. And it's like a moving truck whose pumpkins in the back rearrange themselves as we hit the road. It's a rural language that I've seen a lot. Fill the truck with pumpkins, hit the road, they start shaking, making noise. Suddenly they settle down and you don't even remember that you had all those pumpkins behind. But until they settle, it makes a lot of noise. That's how it happens in our lives. Whenever someone is taken away, the truck makes noise. And we think that noise will be eternal. I remember the death of my sister when Heloisa died. It was so traumatic at home. It was so difficult to restore the house without her presence, even though she didn't live with us anymore. She lived in Belo Horizonte at the time, but you have to restructure your heart because the other person lives within us. Family is not just the place where people live in the same house. Family is when people live within each other. And when someone dies, we lose that tenant. You lose that presence that was within you. Of course, the longing will remain, but you don't embrace anymore. You don't find, you don't talk. So this organization of mourning, it will need to go through the process of getting used to the absence. And in your case, Jose, you are still going through the harsh experience of losing two people in a very recent period. My daughter, you will have to have a lot of patience with your feelings. This won't change overnight. You will have to accommodate these two people in your longing, in your feelings, so that you can continue your life as it was before. Of course, it will never be the same, because it can't. It's not for those who haven't lost either. Life is not the same. Life can never be the same, even for those who haven't lost. Life is always in motion. Just the other day, a friend of mine found out her son was ill. She was devastated. The same illness her husband had, which was extremely painful for them, she found out her son had too. What to say? Of course, we say, I'm with you, I'm praying with you, but that's a dilemma she will need to face. No matter how much I love her, I cannot enter her heart and live that suffering for her. I even took her in all the intentions of my masses during the pilgrimage. And I asked God, I asked Our Lady in a special way, since we were in Marian territories, that Our Lady would do in her heart what God did in your heart when accompanying the agony of your son. The boy's illness is not a death sentence, but it touches on hardship. It touches on suffering. We don't want our children to be ill. After the news, which at first seems like the end of the world, then because we are people of faith, our process is to rebuild reality, and we come out of it even better. So we can never want life as it was before. That's something for children. That's an illusion. Life will never be the same for those who have lost and for those who haven't. We need to adapt to the movements that time has made, always in the daily effort to put soul into our body, to give meaning to our life, to never allow difficulties, losses to prevail over all of this. Now, my daughter, as time goes by, we mature with the event. When God has the opportunity to act in our lives in these moments of pain, it's amazing how we are changed for the better. And this is possible, yes, not only because it happened in my life, but because It happened in the lives of thousands of people who give wonderful testimonies of overcoming, who help us understand the pedagogical dimension of pain, of suffering. It's the proof, before our eyes, of many people who have also gone through the harsh experience of losing children, husbands, mothers, siblings, boyfriends, girlfriends, spouses, and after continuing existence. Now, patience with the process is important. I cannot anticipate this healing. It's like the healing process. A friend of mine, Adelina, my travel companion, from Fortaleza, spontaneous all the time. That's why I liked her from the first time I saw her. She wears her heart on her sleeve. And then, after one of my preachings during the pilgrimage, she gave me a little note with just one sentence like this: "What doesn't inflame cannot be cured." Inflammation is the body's first movement to be healed in what has been hurt. So, inflammation is a manifestation of the body's own immunity, wanting to expel what is attacking the flesh. And it is indeed. A simple little sentence made me remember that sometimes when we were kids, we'd get a thorn in us. That thorn hurt. Hurt for 2-3 days until it turned yellow, and then the secretion itself would work to expel that relief. We squeezed it, it all came out, that ugly thing. The thorn came out, and that's it. The body was there, without pain. It's like that nasty pimple on your face. It hurts, 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 hurts. And you go there, do everything wrong, give it a squeeze. Isn't it, Christian? Almost breaks the mirror. Relief. Dermatologists shouldn't even hear us talking. They can't know that we do that, no. But when you have that inflamed thing, when you go there, give it a prick like this. After the inflammation is the movement of healing. In our hearts, when we lose someone, we are inflamed with pain. And if we allow that inflammation to go through the natural process of expelling, of throwing away what is infected in us, our future will not be like before. I repeat, even for those who haven't lost, it's not the same, but we can make that future worth it. I am a very sad person. Besides this married talk, when I got married, with 1 year of marriage, I lost my first child. Then I went through a lot of sadness. Because of that, I spent over a year with a lot of depression, a lot of sadness. Then other children came, 4 daughters came. I raised them all well. When it was this year, which ended yesterday, from January 11th, I lost Vida's grandson to drowning, right, at 4.5 years old. This father has greatly affected my life. I was very sad, very shaken, very shocked. I almost died. Even today, I carry this sadness within me. I really wanted to live this, Father. This child has stirred me deeply. It was like this. It was worse than my son's case. It was much worse because it was like this. My son's death was sudden because he drank a porridge and then he didn't choke. But the porridge he drank was ingested into his lungs. And my grandson's death was a drowning death, a death that I found very sudden, very abrupt. So I couldn't accept this. Then I became a person against God, full of anger, full of resentment, of sadness, of revolt. You know, Father, I used to be a very godly person, very prayerful. Then I blamed myself a lot. Why? Why did I blame myself? Because I thought I had prayed too little, blamed the person, blamed God. I thought God should have gone there and taken him out of that water, saved my grandson. So, Father, it was so hard. We made it 4.5 years. It was very hard for me. It's still very hard. Asking God to help me, to enlighten me from yesterday to today, for me to get rid of this sadness, this anguish. It's a very heavy burden on my shoulders. This sadness, this anguish comes and goes. For me, it's a very, very heavy burden. I need to get better from this because I can't go on like this, because otherwise I won't resist, Father. I won't die of sadness, of suffering, and I can't go on like this. And there you go. Now I want you to call me. What should I do, Father? FG. Mrs. Maria, the first thing that is very beautiful already to identify in you is the desire to change. Every time we are faced with an event that traumatizes us, that takes the ground from under us, because an event like this takes the our ground, an innocent, a person we love, dead there. I'm remembering mother. Our friend from Sergipe also, who went through the same experience, and she took her son out of the water. She was the one who took him out, a dead boy. I heard this story, and I had the opportunity to be with this woman, who is the mother of this boy, on the banks of the Jordan River when we went to the Holy Land. And I remember that when I baptized her, the word that came to me was this. I poured the water from the Jordan River over her head, and I said to her like this, take your son out of the water once and for all. Because from the time of the boy's life, of the boy's death, until that day, she was keeping the boy drowned. She didn't take him out of the pool because she only lived around that. She didn't do anything else. She lived all the time the experience of drowning. It's that old story, right, folks? The event is there, and I can't detach from it. So, no matter how long it has been, the boy is still drowned, the boy is still in the water. Before that word, she decided to react. And it was very beautiful to hear this from them. Father, we are very grateful that that word helped my sister to continue her life. Mrs. Maria Duzzy, I wish I could take this pain out of your heart, but maybe you can also start taking your grandson out of the water. Don't keep him drowned anymore. Don't put your thoughts anymore. Don't fix your idea, your story in his drowning. First thing, remove the guilt. There's no need to find blame for such a tragic story. Even if you find out who's to blame, it won't bring the boy back. It won't solve our pain. No. What we need to do now is to continue life from what we have. We can't take the boy out of there anymore. We can't resurrect him anymore. And we can't bring him back to life. There was no time to do anything, but now there's a beautiful way to make resurrection happen. Restoring life in the family, bringing the joy back. Because we all are deprived, Mrs. Maria Dulce. When we have someone at home who cannot live through the process of loss, all of us around are harmed. We are harmed. And it's beautiful for you to say, I don't want to be bitter. I don't want to be a sad person. This reaction is already God's action in you. The time of revolt, it's part of life. We are human. We are fragile. We will revolt. We will scream. We will blaspheme. But this has to be temporary. Screaming and blasphemy don't heal our hearts. No. What heals our hearts is the prayer of surrender. And this must be your prayer, your daughter's prayer. Lord, I cannot change the death of my grandson, so I want to entrust him to you. I want you to take care of him and remove this guilt from us. Grant us the grace to continue living without needing to find someone to blame for this tragedy. Entrusting to God does not mean we alienate ourselves. No, we only entrust to God what cannot be fixed anymore, because the rest we do, we run after because He is helping us to achieve it. But what cannot be fixed anymore, leave it in His hands. Remove that weight from you. You are trying to solve the problem, and there's no way to solve this problem. There's no way to bring this boy back. So today, removing him definitely from the waters is to accept that death happened, but that now we want to continue life, qualifying our daily lives, our history, preparing our future in a more beautiful way. Entrust this dear grandson of yours to the Lord and see him as an intercessor praying for you. He is a legitimate representative in the heaven, a legitimate representative of the family who is in heaven without suffering. There's nothing bad, only us here who need to deal with this pain. I lived through a tragedy that deeply unbalanced me. It happened in our family on December 30th, 2008. My 15-year-old niece, who was under my care, took her own life. I see two aspects. One positive, which is Jesus in my heart, absolves me of the guilt I carry. But there's also a negative aspect that often prevails, which is the result of my illness, which affirms to me that the blame for her death is mine. I feel the desire to go to the same building where she judged herself and repeat the same insanity. But thanks to Jesus and the work the Lord has done in my life, I lack the courage to displease God, and I do not want to sadden Him with this lack of faith. So that the Lord may better understand my feeling of guilt, I will speak to you affectionately and briefly about my niece, Tassiana. She speaks of the girl, that she was a very special, very sweet girl, and that unfortunately, she fell into this absurdity of wanting to die, right? And she is experiencing a terrible aggravation, which is she is accused in the police investigation by her boyfriend, by Tatiana's boyfriend, of being the one to blame because of the curfew she imposed on their relationship. The boy claims that the girl was unhappy with this. The judge closed the case as there was no concrete evidence against the mentioned aunt, who is me. Father, the feeling I have is that Tatiana's whole life was pushed into an abyss, and I gave the final push. That's what kills me every day. My daughter, do not allow this to happen. We cannot enter the heart of the one who has passed away, and we cannot know the reasons. One thing is certain. It's foolish to think that your niece would kill herself because you set curfews for her relationship. No. Unfortunately, my daughter, our young people are arriving. You yourself were saying that she ended up in your hands precisely because of a difficult story that this girl already had. A child is like a house. If the foundation isn't good, it won't stand for long. That's how it is. You took this girl at a certain moment in life when you could no longer interfere with her foundations. It is very difficult for us to provide a life structure to someone who arrives completely unstructured. I'm not saying it's impossible. It is possible to help provide structure to someone who has never had it, but it will be much harder. And here, my friends, I extrapolate the conversation to speak to those of you who have children. Be careful. Be careful with what you are offering this child. Be careful with the home you're putting under this child's feet. All that you offer today will be decisive for the future. As a young person, as an adult, as an elderly person, we become who we are not by chance, but as the result of all the influences we receive. We are born and already start receiving these influences. And we need to fight hard for our home to be a place where people can truly be prepared. Human beings need to be prepared. We can't handle life just any way. We need structure. And to love is precisely to lend this structure. It is to grant the other the possibility of growing, of not wanting to die, right? Because suicide is slow, no one jumps from 1 hour to the next. The reasons gradually undermine our hearts. I remember the story of a young man in Taubaté, already in the last year of medical school, who was found dead, hanging from a rope. Imagine, a guy with his future ahead in the last year of medical school suddenly appears hanging there months before graduation. That rope isn't tied overnight. That rope is tied gradually. And if we don't take care, we also tie a rope around our neck. Living is the experience of condemning or saving. Living is the experience of accepting condemnation or accepting salvation. It passes all the time through the path of others, but it also passes through ours. Today we experience situations that condemned us or saved us. It's like adding or removing a segment of rope. Everything depends on the choice, on the selection we make. Life needs to be sifted, just like the prospector does. He takes that pile of dirt in a sieve and sifts it slowly until he sees if there's a precious stone or not. If there isn't, he throws everything away and starts over. The end of our day should always be a prospecting experience. Look at the sieve of the day. Look at everything that happened, everything you heard, everything you experienced, all the situations you faced, everything that fell before your eyes, everything you saw, everything you heard, and only keep what is precious. We waste a lot of time keeping junk. Throw it away. Don't take to your bed. Don't take to your sleep what was the rubbish of the day. Otherwise, it becomes a noose around your neck. It's amazing how much we slowly kill ourselves when we don't sift out what truly wasn't worth it. Now, if we insist on keeping everything that's worthless, then we truly tie knots in our rope around our neck. And suddenly, when you least expect it, you're ready to die. It's lamentable, but it's true. The wrong choices we make in life represent a rope we're tying around our own necks. I'm seeing with great happiness the recovery of a nephew of mine, whom I love very much, Conrado, a boy who for a long time, a handsome, intelligent, smart boy, chose to tie the rope around his neck. And today, thanks to God, because of eyes that see salvifically, of people who are lending him a new meaning to life, Conrado is having the beautiful experience of judging the segments of rope around his neck, recovering, rehabilitating himself, making peace with life. You can observe sometimes we get mad at life, and every time we're mad at life, we start creating the possibility of death. That's what happened to your niece, my daughter. Unfortunately, she grew up mad at life. There was a lack of structure, a lack of love, a lack of attention. The home was not what she needed. And at a certain point, any little weakness, any difficulty, she jumps. Why? Because she's not prepared. She suffered too much. She can't stand life's problems anymore, lacks preparation to stay standing. That's why it's so hard to recover a person. Because it's at that moment that the quality of our education, of our structure, comes into play. It's like when I had hepatitis. I remember a phrase from Dr. Antonio very well. I said, "Doctor, what now? What are we going to do?" He said, "Father, now, we don't have to do anything. You have hepatitis, and now we'll see what your body can do with the problem you have." Likewise, when Robinho had cancer, I was so shaken by Robinho's illness that I sought out all the resources I could to see if we could save that boy. And then a friend of mine, who is a doctor, told me very harshly, very bluntly. I said to him, "So, during this recovery period, we'll change his diet, do this, do that." He looked at me and said, "Look, Father, we think all of this will change things. It's true that giving him a better diet will help a little with his recovery, but don't be fooled. It's the past that will determine things now. Everything that this boy ate, everything he experienced with his health, will determine now whether he will recover or not. Yes, my friend, life is like this. One day it confronts us with the choices we made. And then, because I had the opportunity to get out of that horrible situation, which my hepatitis complicated too much, because I was using terrible medications at that time, highly hepatotoxic, right? Imagine I was taking an anti-inflammatory because I was already feeling joint pain, right? It was already a symptom of hepatitis, but I didn't know it. I thought I had arthritis, osteoarthritis, all that bunch of things. I was taking a highly hepatotoxic medication for over a month when suddenly I found out I had hepatitis. Imagine a liver that was already suffering from hepatitis, still suffering from the wear and tear of heavy anti-inflammatories. The fragility of the body is immense. It can't cope. I almost needed a transplant. So what's the fight? The fight is all about a health process that, thank God, I was going through lately, with discipline in eating, sleeping, working. I was living right, thank God. I got sick at a time when I was living right, and then my body reacted. That's how life is, my friends. Sooner or later, we will be held accountable for what we nurtured within ourselves. Love is not an easy event. Although we possess it as a gift within us, you know from your life and practical experience how much it hurts to love. Because that is love. Love is an event that becomes eternal within us by its very nature. And love cannot conceive of unhappiness. Where there is love, there cannot be unhappiness. There can be suffering, but not unhappiness. In life, we have two possibilities. We either suffer the pain of loving and are happy, or we suffer the pain of lovelessness and are unhappy our whole lives. That's why Jesus once went up a mountain to speak to his friends about the great meaning of happiness. And surely the disciples were expecting a magical formula, just as we often hear today in the world. Formulas for happiness that are absolutely easy. One thing unsettles me about this formula for happiness. How can you understand that someone can be happy while crying? How can someone be happy in a moment of hunger? How can we reconcile two realities and find happiness in them? How can an apparently unhappy situation, like your pain, your tears, make you understand that this tear, this pain, is the source of human happiness? The beauty of life often lies not in what we can see, but in what we can see beyond the physical eyes. Only those who have delved into what comes before happiness can understand true happiness. Because human life is concrete. It gains meaning as we dive into the past to know the true future. We can only talk about joy if we have known sadness before. We can only talk about consolation if we have known despair before. If you have not yet discovered what truly makes you happy or fulfilled, it might be because you have not yet delved into the mystery of your sadness, for example. Perhaps you have not yet delved into the mystery of your suffering and have extracted nothing from it but disappointment. Life is like this. If today you wanted to recount your life and discover how much you have grown in your story, if today you wanted to make a report of your life, to recall who you are, to tell the world who you are, all you need to do is recount everything you have already suffered. Human sufferings are very similar, only the address changes. As my mother always said, each person in their own place suffers their own share. If today you had the opportunity to say who you are, you wouldn't know how to say it without including everything that has happened to you, that has marked you, that has defined you, everything you have suffered, everything you have let go, everything you have buried, all the life story that has passed through your days, your home, your family, because there is no concrete human being outside the experience of suffering. And everything you had to commit to, everything you had to fight for, everything you had to reconcile within yourself, there is your identity. There is your mark. There is your face in the life you have dedicated yourself to, in the loves you have loved, in the children you have raised, in the sleepless nights to keep that child alive. Only those who knew how to fight can overcome. We are, in time and history, the sum of everything we have been able to prepare. But it is not suffering for suffering's sake. When Jesus presents us with a way of being human, a way of being man and woman, he is showing that life is only possible when we manage to turn suffering into redemption. If you have to walk 30 kilometers, you need to take a step. The suffering of the journey is worth the joy of arrival. There is no resurrection without Calvary. There is also an interesting story. It is said that the American eagle, as time passes, its claws become curved, its beak becomes curved. It loses its hunting power because the claws can no longer hold the prey, and the beak can no longer eat properly. At that moment, after having lived a good part of its life, it has to make a decision. It retreats to the heights, to the rocks, to the cliffs, and there it undergoes a painful process that consists of beating its beak against a rock until it starts to hurt, bleed, and eventually fall off. The eagle needs to lose the beak that no longer serves it, and it is painful. Once the beak falls off, a new one starts to grow as if a child were developing again. And the process is not over yet. When the new beak has grown strong, it begins to remove its old claws. With the new beak, it starts to remove the claws that no longer serve it because they are curved and can't hold prey. If it continues with those old claws, what happens? It starves. It no longer has the characteristics of an eagle. It is an eagle, but an eagle without power. After completing the process of removing the claws, new, strong, young claws begin to grow. And still, the suffering is not over. Instinctively, it knows it needs to remove its feathers because they are old and it needs new feathers. Once it has a new beak and new claws, it starts removing its feathers one by one to wait for the regeneration process. It seems that it takes 6 months hidden in the cliffs to undergo this process. With a new beak, new claws, and new feathers, the eagle can live the same amount of life it has already lived. It's as if it starts living again. Have you ever thought about how fertile nature can be to help us understand the true meaning of the Beatitudes? Because there are many moments in our lives when we come to a situation where either we undergo the process of loss to start anew, or we die as we are. When we are not able to react to life, when we slowly give in, when we no longer perceive life within us, when we feel proud to be an eagle, but are actually an eagle without the power to fly. Eagles, the very meaning of strength, of struggle. Every Christian is a potential eagle capable of soaring, capable of overcoming obstacles. Christianity strengthens us for that. Yet we still live crawling and scratching like chickens. We are potential eagles, but we live like chickens in backyards. Why? Because we have not yet had the courage to face true suffering. There are 2 ways to face suffering, 2 ways to face difficulty. Either we face it head on to overcome it, enduring the pain of the fight, just as the eagle endures the pain of removing its old claws, its old beak, changing its feathers, or we will spend our lives lamenting that we can no longer hunt. We either face the suffering of redemption, this suffering that transforms, which is the daily decision of waking up and deciding, today, God wants me standing. Today, God wants me alive. Today, God wants me fighting. Or we will succumb a little more each day, becoming more apathetic, more lifeless, thinking we are eagles when we are merely eagles in appearance, not yet transformed by the restorative power that life demands of us. We still have not discovered the strength in the specific things that God asks of us. The Beatitudes are here to demonstrate that we can only reach the beauty of the future if we know how to live the renunciation, the sacrifice, the struggle of the present. You experience this in your life. How many young people today, for example, are facing the great difficulty of getting into university, not passing? It's not because now the entrance exam is presenting itself as a monster. It's because the whole educational process was lived carelessly by the vast majority. Thank you for joining us on this spiritual journey at Path of Faith. Your participation is key to our community's growth, so please leave your comments, give us a like, share this video, and subscribe for more uplifting content.